Hey everyone, it's Tom Rich with another episode of Turn On Engagement podcast. Today, I'll be talking with Dustin Clinard. He is the Vice President of Partnerships at Betterworks. Betterworks is an organization based here in the United States where they take care of performance management and customer engagement. Dustin oversees the partnerships for the entire globe. In this podcast today, he and I will be discussing both post and pre-pandemic sales methods, as well as the new hybrid way salespeople are working in this newfound world that we're in. Stay tuned. It's all coming up here on Turn On Engagement podcast. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Tom Rich here from HubEngage, and today I have a guest. Dustin is my man. He's here and giving me his gracious of time to discuss some of the things we've been discussing on topic of the last couple of months. First and foremost, I'd like to give an introduction to Dustin and his background and where he comes from, just so the audience can get a better feel of who he is, what he is, and what he's all about. But again, Dustin Clinard is the man. Just a little quick bio. He went to the University of Michigan for his undergrad, and from there he went to Northwestern, for his grad school. We don't hold anything against him on any of those. As he says, he's keeping in the Big Ten family, and kudos to him and his efforts. Those are some legit schools, Dustin. But he claims he started in engineering. We might have to do a background check on that or not, but he claims he started in engineering, working in chemical plants and so forth. And apparently the chemicals must have got to him, and he said enough of that stuff. And so today he actually is in HR software. He's stuck to HR software. And he is he's decided that HR is a better way to do it. A little bit about him: he loves golf. He's a hacker, loves golf, and I asked him some of his dreams. One of his dreams would be to see the Red Wings and the Bruins both be good. Apparently, he's a hockey connoisseur as well. Watching him playing it, and I've always heard that rumor that a hockey game, you go to a fight and a game breaks out. So apparently, Dustin, we'll see how that plays out as well for you. But he loves golf, loves softball, and all around a good gentleman. He's been married now with his bride. He's got 4 kids, 3 of which are girls. So he's outnumbered, and then he's got a son. So I don't know if he wants to shoot for another one or not to try and even up the score or not, but I can imagine your activities are well taken care of, and you're a busy man, Dustin. So again, thanks for joining us on our Total Employee Engagement podcast today, Dustin, and appreciate your time. So the first question, we'll start off, Dustin. First question I have for you is, apparently we're out of this pandemic. Well, it depends on the day, right? Some days we are, some days we're not. But apparently, we're out of the pandemic. But looking back on this pandemic, how have you? One of my questions would be to you is how have you communicated with your sales teams and executives during this COVID pandemic?
Yeah, well, we'll launch right into it. I think the pandemic is over. At least that's what it seems around here. And it happens instantly. Like instantly, the rules change. Sometimes you know about it, and sometimes you don't. But I appreciate you having me on, Tom. Most of what you described, I feel like in my bio makes it sound like I'm just trying to extend my childhood. I play softball because it's like I can stay a kid again. Even with my kids, I feel like I do stuff with them just so I can stay a kid again. The classic saying, I still feel like I'm 18. I think it's going to be true forever. So I don't know. I kind of like that.
I like it too. I like it, dude. Yeah.
But to answer your question from a communication standpoint, I think I've been in sales for long enough to know that candid conversations go an awful long way. And the company I work for, the CEO used to run WebEx for Cisco. And so we've always been a video present company before the pandemic. So come pandemic, we use video for everything. It's not mandatory, but everybody does it because it is a better way to engage. But it's not the only way to engage. And so I think what we've seen is you miss the in the hallway, the between meetings, the meeting leader's late, so we can have a different conversation for 2 minutes. You miss all that. You miss a lot of that with Zoom. And so the thing that's helped us is the telephone. Just pick up, if like an iPhone is also a telephone, for those that didn't know that. And just calling people. It doesn't have to be scheduled, doesn't have to be a Zoom call, doesn't have to be on the hour. It can be when you need to. And if you think about it like that, you have a whole separate, it's your way of making up for all the stuff that used to happen in, between the cracks. And it's like gauging somebody's set, how they hesitate when they answer your question gives you a sense for, how they're leaning or how they're feeling, I think you get that. You have to get that in a different way now than you did before. Basically.
Yeah, no, dude, I love how you said, as far as your CEO, right? What you lucked out, right? Sounds like you lucked out with having somebody that was already in that video experience and way ahead of the curve, because most America wasn't, and most of the world wasn't, and it just threw everybody into that panic mode. As far as, hey, if we can't meet in person, we're shutting this thing down, right? And heaven forbid going anything outside that. So that's pretty cool that you had a forward thinker with that and had you all ahead of the game. That's good for you, good for the organization, good for you guys both. Let me ask you this, for continuing this a little bit further here, Dustin. How is the communication gone with like vendors? So what have you seen out there that what maybe has worked or hasn't worked? Obviously, it's working at your org, right? It sounded like you were way ahead of the curve with this one. But how have you seen, these other organizations, and what have you seen other organizations doing or not doing that, where you kind of go, what? Or, oh, good on you. If you can answer me something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one, and I'll use your vendor term pretty broadly. I happen to run partnerships here. So, vendors could be consulting firms, they could be technology firms, they could be vendors that supply us. But if I put it all in one big bucket, prior to the pandemic, one of the biggest things that I certainly faced, and I think a lot of people faced, is, can I find the time to talk to somebody, or can I find the time to talk to somebody when they have the time to talk to me? And the time was often centered around whether they were traveling. No, he's in Europe for the week. No, she's in California meeting with people. And it was like, that was a real dynamic of, we can't talk because we can't find a time that we're both in the same place, at home, in an office, or whatever. And so what I started seeing in mid 2020 was, that's just not a thing anymore. Everybody had time. And so because everybody was at home, you knew they were at home. They could be in a meeting, but everybody now has the time for 2 minutes or for 5 minutes. And what became important was the intention. And so what is the point of this started to bubble up and become, not that hasn't always been important, but it was always clouded by the schedule. And now if you take some of that away, is the intention of this discussion useful on both sides? Of course we can find, hold on, Tom. I think my audio may have switched. We're having a real live lesson in communication.
No, I love it. You know what? Quite frankly, this is what we live, right, Dustin? And before what just happened there, right? Before you'd think, oh no, the world's ending, but that's the norm right now, right? Just to bring it into focus as far as meetings, Zoom meetings. These are all things that are natural and things that happen even in a podcast or even in meetings. That's what I love. Quite frankly.
I hope you don't edit this out.
I see it all the time, right? I mean, just to share with the audience, I was having some issues with the video, right? With the video on this thing, and so I was like, okay, Dustin, we're going to do this audio and do this podcast via, with audio rather than video. This is how we live, right? This is the new normal of our world, and quite frankly, I love it.
I just did the equivalent of like leaving my notebook in the other room. When you go to me, I got to go back and grab it. I love I love AirPods, but even when they're in my pocket, they somehow suddenly turn on. So,
Oh, you and I both had that experience yesterday. It was a good meeting, and I was talking to myself apparently, and I thought I had lost my audience. And then, ironic enough, I was like, oh, I have my earbuds. I have the dock station in my pocket, and I went to earbuds, and it was one of those normalcies, as I call it. How's that?
yeah, we're all human. But to
No.
go back to your question, if I think of something I experienced personally, is I in my role want to have some conversations with some pretty senior consulting folks from some pretty well-known companies that everybody would have heard of. And historically, there's a little bit of a gatekeeper, there's a little bit of a schedule, whatever those little things add up to. It's difficult to get the right meeting with the right person.
Mm-hmm.
And post pandemic, I found that had completely changed. I was able to get one meeting with the right person a lot more frequently. Your ability to get the second meeting had a lot to do with whether the first meeting was as good as you promised it was going to be. But I could easily get the first meeting with somebody. And in my case, if the first meeting is 3 minutes, but it's a good 3 minutes, that opens up the avenue for a whole lot more. And I found myself with more access, so I could make it further faster.
Uh-huh.
So I think there's actually an upside from that.
Huh, that's fascinating. I just learned something new from you on that. I appreciate that. That's kind of cool. Fascinating stuff. Well, let me ask you, so being with partnerships, heading that up for your in the field, and I mean that's a tough one, man. Partnerships are unique. They're ever changing, and you're always having to feed them, right? And in a sense of education or the next new widget or whatever it is to keep them engaged, and flourishing on their side and your side and together. Partnerships are that's a good juggling act. So what kind of tools have you used, or are you not? What did you adapt, or how did you adapt with those partnerships, with keeping them engaged and keeping new ones coming in? It sounds like I heard how you're keeping new ones coming in. Love that. How do you keep the old ones, no pun intended, but the old ones or the current ones, engaged with this whole pandemic and during the pandemic? And how did that roll for you, Dustin?
Yeah, it's a great practical question, because I think in the partnership world, this may sound terrible to say it, but there's a lot of reasons for partnership people to come together at industry events or at regional events, or otherwise find a reason where you meet somebody somewhere in person. And those often gave you the ability to talk about a client you might have, or an opportunity you were thinking about, or what do you think if we did this marketing piece together? And they'd be similar to before. They kind of be the in the cracks conversations, but they happen frequently enough. And if you go to the same, we're in the HR tech industry, so you go to the HR tech industries and meetings, and you meet people, and it gives you a way to communicate with your partners on some frequency. Maybe it's once a year, maybe it's a couple times a year, but it happened, and then all the meetings dried up, and there were no more of those. And so if you didn't have, we have some partners that are very intentional. We talk to them all the time. We know exactly what we're doing. We have others, though. We have a lot of others that are potential. Maybe there's something there for us. We probably have some joint clients. Maybe we can do some marketing together. Maybe we should do something more formal. And but we're not seeing them for a couple of years. And if you don't see them, you have to force the brainstorming conversations onto the calendar. But you can't do it with everybody, because there's way too many vendors in our case to be able to do that with. And so I think the tools, I don't know if the tools necessarily change. I mean, Zoom, but the way we went about doing it was forcing frequent, when you think there's potential, but admitting that there was potential. So this meeting is about brainstorming some potential. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go all the time, but if we have joint clients, or we have work that's services that are complementary, and the teams have some cultural synergy, or they get along at least, or they don't hate each other, you have something to go on, and you can start to move forward. There have been some interesting tools, though. Speaking of tools, there are some interesting partner tools that have made up for, like in partnerships, you often do account mapping. For our clients. So there's been a lot of tools in the account mapping space that have started to creep up that allow you to do that more automatically, more automated. So it almost like I think of those tools as creating a reason to talk to somebody that you might otherwise not have a reason for. And that I think has been a really great development from a functional standpoint.
And so that's fascinating. I wasn't aware of that as well, Dustin. So that's just something that's new, that's cropped up over the last couple of years then, or is this been around or has it just been rebranded and shot out there? Is this truly a new product and concept?
I think it's pretty new. I mean, I don't know if I'm the expert on the history of everything, but having a way to manage all of your partners is not new, or a way to communicate them. So there are partner management platforms that are out there, or partner
right.
Depending on the industry that you're in, you might have a few strategic partners or lots of partners. Say in the agency world or something like that. But this account mapping, especially for B2B SaaS companies, the concept of account mapping, we're all frequently chasing the same companies. And so that has become a really interesting tool set to say, where do we have overlaps that maybe we didn't realize? And prior to this, it was done manually with a spreadsheet, but sending a spreadsheet of your customers to another partner carries its own risks. They could be intellectual property risks, they could be legal risks. And so it wasn't that easy to do. And now this gives you the ability to say, we're both working at, X, whatever consumer products company together. We didn't even know that before. And now I know that. It gives us the reason to talk about, is this something we can align around? Is it the same people? Is it for the same reason? Are we solving kind of the same problem, but maybe from two different perspectives? The company's going through a big workforce transformation. We're both helping with elements of it and didn't even realize it. And that's where I think it gets really interesting. So to answer your question, I think the tools are pretty new. I'd have to go back and do more research to figure out when they started, but I love it. I love them.
It sounds like it's working, and that's the vital part right there. I love it. And I love hearing that. All right, Mister, here's your last question of the day. This has been very good, Dustin. I appreciate. I've had some aha moments just in this conversation today. But my last question for you today is this: How do you keep yourself motivated, or how have you kept yourself motivated through this unique time in our era with the pandemic?
Oh, Netflix and no, that's kind of true. I actually didn't watch a lot of Netflix, and my first pandemic Netflix series was Peaky Blinders back.
Bloody Blinder, yes.
I was a little bit late, but I started it probably March of 2020 when I had nothing else to do at night, and it was it set me on a path. Can't say the net effect is good or bad, but it certainly has kept me busy. I think a couple things. One is back to the intentional comment. I live in Boston. We have offices in New York, California. We've gone to a remote first model, so people can work at home as long as they want, but we do have offices open that people can go into. And so I used to go to New York frequently, and I ran a couple offices down there also for some different companies, but I'd go there and I'd do the same job that I would do at home. And so you just work on the train, you get to New York and you work, you go out to dinner with somebody, and then you go home. And what I realized was that doesn't work anymore. I can do all of it's wasting time. It's wasting a precious opportunity to go to New York, to go to the office and do the same thing that I would do from home. And so what I started doing was clearing my calendar on the day that I was going to be in New York and spend the time more intentionally interacting to get those between the cracks moments with the people that I no longer had the chance to do that with. And so all of the emails can happen on Tuesday and Thursday, but Wednesday, I'm not going to spend as much time on my email or building presentations or doing outreach because I want to connect with my colleagues. And I think that made that has been an aha moment that I hope doesn't go back to just normal work, no matter where you are. Like, there's a reason that you're there. Capitalize on it. The other thing I realized was, speaking of that, because I traveled a lot, on a train or on a plane, that was where I would do my thinking time. And so then when I get to my computer, that's where I did my work. And now that you're in your office all the time at your computer, I started to realize I had no thinking time, because when I'm at my computer, I wanted to do stuff. And so I started blocking out times to think about things. And in the summertime in Boston, in certain parts of the year, you can actually go for walks outside because the weather's beautiful. In other parts, it's a little tougher. But that was where so I'd block 2 hours and try to hit, what can you do in 2 hours? You can probably do like 6 miles or 7 miles or something like that walking, and use that to think about something that I would have done on a train. And that's a change I had to make in my own schedule to try to reconcile for the differences. But I hope that's getting to your question, Tom.
No, it did. It's again, I appreciate you sharing that, and appreciate the fact that you know what, you admitted that, right? Where it's a mature statement, and it's a maturity that you've reached in your development, and as well, your work life, we'll call it the work-life balance. And again, I appreciate the vulnerability and saying, I blocked out two hours of time just to have my alone. I get where you're at. I understand what you're saying. And another thing I've learned, Dustin, from you today is just that, to block out some of these time. We have our outreach, we have our, all the things throughout the day, but where's my time to have creative thinking and to set that aside? So I appreciate that. Something else I learned today. So that kind of ends it for the day. I appreciate Dustin Clinard joining me, and I look forward to hearing some other. We'll have him probably come on in some future podcasts that we'll have, and elaborate a little bit further and see if he's upped his game on golf or hockey, or if he's added another boy to his family and team. But again, Dustin, thanks so much for joining us, and we will chat soon.
Well, Tom, of the two things you just said, one of them is not going to happen, but one of them might. So we'll check in next time on which one.
Right on. Thanks again, Dustin.
All right. Take care.
Hey there, employee communications and HR folks. We've got some big news to share over here at HubEngage. We've officially been made a Society of Human Resource Management recertification provider. So if you're a SHRM member and you're in need of getting your mandatory recertification credits, you can tune into our new webinar series where we educate and train you on a variety of HR-related topics and trends, so you're up to date on your continuing education requirement. SHRM is a great place for all things HR, and with this exciting new partnership HubEngage has created, we can now recertify you while you turn on engagement at the same time inside of your company. For more details and to sign up for a recertification course with one of our HubEngage SHRM certified experts, visit hubengage.com and click on the SHRM tab under resources to get started today.